Let's dive into the story of Nvidia, its founder Jensen Huang, and the incredible little microchip that has, pretty quietly, become one of the most important resources on the entire planet. Our guide for this is Stephen Witt's fantastic book, The Thinking Machine. So let's get right into it. You know what people on the inside of the AI economy are calling Nvidia's most powerful chips, like the H100 GPU? They're calling them the new oil. Think about that. It's the essential fuel for this whole artificial intelligence revolution, and pretty much everyone is scrambling to get their hands on it. And that, of course, raises a massive question. How on earth did a single company, one that used to just focus on video games, end up with what's basically a monopoly on the engine that's powering our future? Well, that's the mystery we're going to unpack today. Okay, let's start with where things are right now. To really get a sense of NVIDIA's power, you just have to look at who's lining up to buy their products. We're talking OpenAI, the folks building the next version of ChatGPT. We're talking Microsoft. We're even talking about the Chinese government. They are all in this frantic race to buy up these chips because they know without them, their AI ambitions just stop. It's made NVIDIA a critical choke point for the entire global economy.
So, how did we get to this point? To figure that out, we have to rewind the clock, because this isn't just a story about bits and bytes. It's a story about a person, a very, very driven, incredibly intense, and as we're about to see, an initially reluctant founder.
Jensen Huang's journey is in some ways a classic Silicon Valley story, but it has some really unique twists. He came over from Taiwan in 1973, a brilliant kid who got bullied as an immigrant student in rural Kentucky. He paid his dues working as a waiter at Denny's, got his engineering start at AMD, and by the early 90s, he was already a rising star. And here's where you get a real glimpse into his personality. At one of his jobs, at a company called LSI Corp, Huang was so intense, so ambitious, that his boss literally had to hire someone else just to manage the friction he was creating with other people. Huang was furious. He felt like his authority was being undermined, and that moment was really the spark that made him decide to go out on his own. It's that exact same drive, that refusal to be slowed down, that would end up defining NVIDIA's whole culture. So when two genius engineers from Sun Microsystems, Chris Malachowski and Curtis Preem, decided they wanted to start a new graphics chip company, they knew exactly who they needed to run it. Yeah, despite his difficult reputation, they saw his genius. He was the only one they trusted. So after a few convincing meetings at a Denny's of all places, a still pretty reluctant Huang finally agreed to come on board. Here's a little bit of fun trivia for you. When they actually went to incorporate the company, they didn't even have a name for it yet. So the lawyer just jotted down NV as a placeholder for new venture. And by pure coincidence, the founders were already calling their first prototype chip the NV1. But NV was never going to be the final name. They looked through a whole list and they finally picked one, NVIDIA. It comes from the Latin word invidia, which means envy. Talk about a bold choice, right? And as it turns out, a pretty fitting one. Now, for a long time, NVIDIA was really just a company for gamers. But then came one single innovation, a move that Huang himself called his craziest bet that changed absolutely everything. This is the moment that really laid the groundwork for the AI world we're all living in today. Okay, so this is the pivot. It's so important. On one side, you've got the GeForce card. It was designed to do one thing and do it incredibly well, render amazing graphics for video games. It does that by performing thousands of simple calculations all at once. This is called parallel processing. But then, Huang's team developed a layer of software called CUDA, and CUDA was basically a key. It was a key that unlocked all of that parallel processing power for anybody, which meant that same gaming card could now be used for really complex scientific computing. The effect of this was nothing short of revolutionary. It was like you could take this consumer product made for playing games, you could flick a switch, and all of a sudden, you had a personal supercomputer sitting on your desk. And the result? An absolute explosion in who was buying NVIDIA's chips. It wasn't just gamers anymore. First, it was scientists who all of a sudden had access to supercomputing power for cheap. Then came the Bitcoin miners. And not long after that, the giants of AI and cloud computing. Your OpenAIs, your Microsofts, and even governments realized, wait a minute, this is the engine we need to build the future. And that brings us right back to today, where the scale of what NVIDIA is building is almost impossible to wrap your head around. The company isn't just making graphics cards anymore. It's building the actual brains of our digital world. If you want an analogy just to try and grasp the complexity, think about this. Picture a maze made from individual strands of human hair. In the early days, that maze might have filled up a tennis court. Today, with Nvidia's newest chips, that same maze of human hair would fill the entire state of Rhode Island. I mean, that is the mind-boggling scale we are talking about.
And what does all that complexity get you? Speed. Just immense, world-altering speed. NVIDIA's own EOS supercomputer was able to train the entire GPT-3 language model, that's a foundational model for all modern AI, in less than 4 minutes. A task that would have taken ages just a few years ago was done in the time it takes to brew a cup of coffee.
This whole incredible story, from a booth in a Denny's all the way to a data center scale supercomputer, is laid out in Stephen Witt's book, The Thinking Machine, which was the source for this entire explainer. And all of this leads us to the most important questions of all. When you have this much power concentrated in one company's hardware, you have to ask, who is really profiting from this AI revolution? Who is actually in control? And what are the consequences going to be for the rest of us? The book leaves us with this powerful final thought. The image of this machine just pulsing away, beautiful and kind of overwhelming. A thinking machine that, with every spin of the fan, with every single pulse of its circuits, gets just a little bit smarter. The real question for all of us is, where is all that thinking leading?